Hi there! In this video I'm going to walk you through my process for creating this super simple but really effective, lovely stylized botanical collage. I'm creating this artwork in response to the prompt Aura, which is the fourth and final prompt for Mindfultober 2024. You don't need to be taking part in Mindfultober though in any way to join along. It's just a really lovely, very simple, very beginner friendly tutorial in using collage and taking a bit of a mindful approach. So to follow along you're going to need some paper, a pencil or pen if you prefer, an eraser, some scissors, glue and a bunch of art materials to play with. You can work in colour or with black and white, either is fine. I've got a bunch of coloured papers to play with today because I love working with colour, but this can work really beautifully in black and white as well. If we haven't met before, my name is Mel, I'm an artist and educator and a top teacher on Skillshare where I teach mindful art making and drawing for beginners. If you're interested in art making for self-care and drawing for beginners, then you're warmly invited to join my free Facebook community. It's a really just lovely, warm and welcoming space where we just get together, share resources, talk about all things kind of mindful art, drawing, and we'd love to have you. I'll link to that down below. So when I think about the term aura, it brings to mind for me something a bit like, I don't know, like a magnetic field or some layers of light or some other kind of wave kind of radiating out from a central point. It kind of, for me, it conjures up this visual idea of layers or like concentric shapes around a central point. I'm in a phase at the moment of exploring folk style botanicals a lot in my work. I'm just absolutely loving it. So I thought it would be really nice to interpret this prompt with a kind of simplified but layered collage, something that's really easy to create but looks also really super effective, very beginner friendly, and I'll show you some kind of mindful approaches that I like to take as well. So I am going to use some coloured paper for my, my collage. I've got a bunch here. Now I kind of wanted a collection of what I call like hot colours, warm colours. There's something about this idea of an aura, something radiating out. To me it feels kind of warm. So I kind of wanted to create that like feeling of it being warm. So I quite like these kind of collection of colours going from sort of orange through to yellow. And I kind of like the idea of them being graded a bit like that. So there's kind of a darker one going into a medium and then light. So it kind of feels like you can get that kind of feeling of something coming out from a central point. So I am going to use the kind of lighter yellow for my largest shape, my largest circle. So I'm just going to cut a circle. Now, I like to work directly with for and with scissors. It can take a bit of getting used to if you are not used to that, but I find for me that it feels much more immediate, feels kind of more playful, and I just think that it's a really nice approach to collage making where it just feels like you're making something more directly with the scissors. So you're kind of using scissors as you would do a pen or pencil if you were drawing. So I'm going to start cutting out a circle, just freehand without drawing something first. Now, I will be cutting a wonky circle, I know this, because I haven't drawn around a circle shape. I don't want you to worry about cutting out wonky shapes because wonky shapes are what gives, you know, it's what's going to give your collage its personality and its charm. So don't worry about cutting something wonky. So I'm going to use this as my background paper. So that circle seems big enough to me to be the kind of the background. I am actually going to trim it down a tiny bit more in a minute and I'll kind of explain why when we get there. So I am just going to use a just going to grab a piece of scrap paper. And on my circle, I'm going to use some of my art materials here. I'm quite enjoying using these crayons. And again, I'm going to use colours which kind of go with this idea of like warmth and light, those kind of yellows and oranges. So what I would like to do is use marks which kind of make sense, going from the middle out, with this idea of something being an aura radiating out. I don't know if that interpretation of aura is kind of right. It's just what it kind of conjures up visually for me. And I think that's kind of the fun thing about using really open-ended prompts, is that you know, you can really, two people's interpretations of the same prompt can be so different. I think that's what makes it fun, so it's not too prescriptive and you can, you know, really take it however you want. So you can see that what I'm doing with the crayon is actually coming right off the edge of the paper. Now the reason for that is that I want these marks to go all the way to the edge of the paper, and not for there to be like a gap between where the mark is and the cut edge. Now that's why I was saying that I will probably just trim a little bit off, just to make sure that that is actually the case, and that my marks are going all the way to the edge. I might not need to trim any off. It looks like that kind of is working, this kind of approach of drawing over the edge of the paper and onto the background. So that, I quite like that. Okay, so I think that'd be nice for my kind of first layer of my simplified collage. And then I'm going to use this next colour. And I want to cut a circle that is a tiny bit smaller than that. So what I'm going to do, what's going to help me with that, is if I just use my first circle, very roughly, I'm not doing it to trace the shape, I'm just going to very roughly cut around that with my second colour. It's really just so that I know kind of what size that shape is, so that I know I need to go a little bit smaller. So I will just go inside here, and whilst I'm cutting this, I'm really focusing my attention on the outside edge of the paper, because I'm kind of mentally trying to trace it parallel a little bit further in. And using techniques like this can be really helpful for mindfulness. We're finding ways to kind of challenge our brain a little bit when we're, you know, in the process of making something. Just helps our mind stay a bit present with the artwork. So I would like to cut a bit more off. I feel like that size-wise is a bit too close to the yellow. So I'm going to cut some more. Let's see. That looks better. Okay, I quite like that. It just kind of feels like there's like enough space left around it that we can kind of appreciate that kind of mark making there. And now I'm going to do the same thing, but with the darker orange that's going to go in the middle. So I'm just going to use this, and I'm going to cut a smaller circle from it, so that it's going to go on in the centre of my flower. Now you can see what I'm doing is starting with relatively big circles and then checking it and then kind of reducing that size. So I want that to go smaller again, because it's, you know, always going to be easier to cut a big shape and make it smaller than vice versa. If you're working in collage, you know, if you've got to make something bigger, it means that you've probably got to cut one all over again from scratch. Yeah, that feels about right. I quite like that. Okay, so I've got my 3 circles there. So what I would like to do with those is just introduce some more mark making. So I'm going to take my medium orange. I'm going to just test out this colour. It's kind of a reddy colour. It'd be quite nice to introduce that. Let's see if the yellow shows up. Not really. Not really. So I'm going to use this red. Now I'm going to do kind of different patterns each time. So that one was kind of radiating out from the centre. What I'm going to try with this one is actually following the edge of the circle instead, with kind of drawing and pattern. So I don't need to worry so much about making sure that I'm going off the edge. I think it's really nice to have like a contrast of different types of mark making within the same piece. So sometimes they might be directional and leading our eye in a particular direction. You know, they're going left to right or up and down. Sometimes they might be next layer. Sometimes they might be kind of radiating from a central point like I'm doing here, or sometimes they might just be kind of filling the shape evenly and randomly to create an effect. And all those things together, I think when you combine different approaches, I think it always looks really effective. So the thing that I love about this particular design, this sort of flower that's just made of circles, is that it's so accessible. I think, you know, sometimes we can sort of look at collage and think, gosh, it's so complicated, you know, and it can be intimidating. But when we, you know, if we look at a collage that's literally just made of sort of circles basically, and wonky ones at that, I think it can just help to break down that barrier of feeling like, you know, we can do that. And that's half the battle. I think very often with art making, one of the challenges is just starting. And there are so many things that can stop us from just starting. And a lot of those things have got to do with our mindset. And sometimes that's just removing some of the challenge or barrier. So I'm going to try that. I quite like that. I think it looks quite nice. So in the middle, I'd like to do something that's kind of randomly filling that orange shape. And I want it to be kind of intense as well, because that's where the aura is coming from. So I'm going to use the red and cover it in dots. I also kind of feel like it will visually represent like the middle of a flower. So, you know, like the middle of a dandelion or sunflower, how that texture in the middle is all kind of full of those little pockets of pollen. I've just shut the blind. The sun is coming in pretty strong this afternoon, which is lovely, but it's making it kind of hard to see. So hopefully that is a little bit easier now. I feel like this flower is actually looking a little bit like the sun. I guess that's how I interpret the prompt aura. It's kind of, yeah, the sun is kind of a good example visually of how I'm imagining that in my mind. So if you are repeating a mark over and over again, if you're creating a pattern of any kind, one of the mindful techniques that I like to use is counting, which literally means just count the number of shapes that you're drawing. It's a bit like counting sheep, I guess. Just giving your mind something else to do that's really simple, but it can just really help to keep you present with the process rather than kind of your mind wandering off. So I'm just trimming a tiny bit off the edge of this circle just because I want to have that effect that the pattern's going all the way to the cut edge, and that is going to go in the middle. I'm quite liking how that's looking already. That's quite nice. So I've got the sort of centre of my flower. I would like to use this kind of turquoisey colour to create just like a simple stem and some leaves now. So I'm going to just cut a strip first of all, which will be the stem. And then I can think about what kind of leaf shapes I'm going to do. So this is where it can be handy to use your scrap paper again. There's lots of ways that you can do leaves. I mean, really simple leaf shapes are very nice. You could do sort of lines, do them half and half in some way. You can do more stylized things as well. I quite like to do sort of circular leaves, can be quite nice. Semicircles or sort of half leaf shapes are quite nice as well. You can add details on there like that. Something a bit more organic is quite nice as well. Even a heart-shaped leaves could be quite nice. So I quite like the idea of the aura kind of idea within the leaf shape as well. So I'm thinking about using a simple leaf shape and then a kind of second shape within it. So there's that echoing from the way that the flower's put together as well. So I think I'll try something like that. So I think I'm going to cut my 2 leaves at the same time. So I'm going to fold my paper in half and cut them both. Thinking about size, could actually create more than 2 leaves. So I think I'll cut my paper into 4. So that is kind of large, whether I don't know if it's going to be too big to fit in another one, but I can always make them smaller. Like I said before, you know, make your shapes smaller, but it's hard to make them bigger. Okay. Yeah, I quite like having more than one set of leaves. It's quite nice. These bottom ones are a little bit big, so I'm just going to make them a bit smaller. Okay, so I'm quite liking that effect. I think I will use use my mark making to introduce some of those shapes, that kind of aura idea. Just got to work out what's the best colour to use. So that one's quite dark, but it's quite nice. That's kind of more greeny, which I quite like. Let's see what happens if I use a yellow even. That's quite nice as well. So the yellow and green together could be quite interesting. So just put some marks into the stem, just some lines really going up the length of the stem. It gives it a really nice texture. And now so I think the way that I'd like to approach this is just to keep the lines quite simple and parallel, So they are just going to be the yellow in the middle, and then the green to the edge. It's kind of subtle. I quite like the subtlety of adding that texture without it being sort of different colours of paper necessarily. So I think just using the coloured pencils to create the texture is quite subtle, and I kind of like that because I really want the focus with this collage to be on the flower rather than on the leaves. So this type of flower collage is because it's, I think, quite an accessible type of collage to create. I think this can be a really fun one to do with your kids. I've had a few times where I've tried this one out with my son, who's 5, and he really likes this because he kind of finds it quite accessible, and he can sort of join in and do it. So So this year, Mindfultober, my approach to all of the prompts has been with collage, and it's quite different to last year. Last year I approached the prompts all with drawing and with quite fine pens as well, so the drawings were all quite kind of detailed. I practiced some of my kind of favourite mindful drawing patterns last year. So my approach this year, I feel, is very different. These collages are all very much more kind of simple in their approach. They're kind of much looser, freer, and I think in some ways more accessible to approach as well if you're following along. This one in particular I think can be a great one to do with kids. I think they really enjoy making something kind of really bold, and it's got this kind of joyful feel to it, this type of flower collage as well. So I hope that you might enjoy the different approach if you were joining along with my tutorials last year. Then I hope that this is a nice kind of a nice difference to the approach from last year. So I've just stuck the different parts of the flower together, so I'm just going to put the stem on. Okay, so here we are, that's finished. I hope you enjoyed following along with this super simple but joyful botanical collage. If you are joining in with Mindfultober, then don't forget to take a photo or scan of your collage and tag me and the other hosts over on Instagram. I'll put all the details down in the description below, and I'd love to see your work. If you enjoyed this video, it would be great if you could just give me a thumbs up, and also why not subscribe to my channel, then you'll be notified when I share more content like this. I hope you enjoyed this, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye for now.